Alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So we're going to start up today with the next major section of the Mutn Abi Shujaa. And of course, most of these will be broken up into four major categories. The first of the categories, ibadat, which is the acts of worship. And so this is like we have the 5 pillars of Islam. So at first, of course, shahada. This is going to be taken in aqidah. And then you would have, after that, the prayer, which is also encompassing tahara. And so these two would come into the first part, the prayer, and then zakah, and also som and hajj. So we took all of these in the last, at the first beginning of the book. And then the next section of the book, they break it into mu'amalat, which is transactions. So the first one is looking at your interaction with Allah, and the next section would be looking at your interaction with the rest of the creation. So of course this is a very important chapter, and of course, or like a section, because it's bigger than a chapter, but this is a very important section, especially for anyone who's wanting to get involved in business. He needs to take special care when he's doing his transactions to make sure he's doing it properly, because this is important that he knows what is riba, and how not to fall into it. For himself, and make sure he's never going in wrong transactions, and also because the rights of the ibad, of the khalq, this is something that their rights of the creation is something that they have to get paid. So this is like with the rights of Allah, Allah can forgive someone for whatever He wishes, but when it comes to the rights of people, this right is going to get paid. There's no. That's why it's very important that everyone is very clear with people around them to make sure nobody's being oppressed, so that Yawm al-Qiyamah there's not going to be someone that's taking their good deeds, or that they're going to take their adab if they don't have any. And so we seek Allah's refuge from that. But this is of course one of the things to make sure that we're not ever falling into taking the rights of other people, and make sure all of our transactions are appropriate. And the second the third section, so this is the transactions, and the third section has to do with family. So this would be like family issues, such as nikah, talaq, khula, some of these different things that have to do with the family affairs, as well as like taking care of kids, taking care of animals, and some of the other things that have to do with caring for people. And then the last of the 4 sections is the jinayat, and also like the other qada. So like the things that have to do like what a qadi would make certain prescriptions for people, and whatnot. And this is normally how to break it down into 4 sections within the Shafi'i madhab. And so here we're starting up with the second major section, which is Kitab al-Buyu' wa ghayriha min al-mu'amalat. And so this is where he says here, Kitab al-Buyu'. And so of course he made this like Buyu' is the plural of bay'. And so he says, and wa ghayriha min al-mu'amalat, which is, and other than that from mu'amalat, is because bay' in general, bay' is something that is, you're exchanging one thing for another. This is like linguistically, bay' is exchanging one thing for another. And so of course this can go for the person who, like shira and bay', they're similar in meaning. Like sometimes they can be flipped inside and out. So you can have someone buying something, you say that, like if someone is selling something, you would say ba'a, or in ba'a yabi'u. Or if he's selling something at the same time, you could say shara yashri, or yashtari. And so sometimes these flip inside and out, as some of the words in Arabic, they go back and forward. And so, but when it comes to, so the bay', when it comes to the shariah, so in linguistically, it means exchanging one thing for another. And then when it comes to the shariah, it is tamliku ayn maliya bi mu'awadatin bi idnin shar'i. So this is exchanging, or it's like tamlik, which is making sure, giving the possession to someone else of something that is worth something. Ayn maliya, and bi mu'awadatin, be something else, with something else that you're exchanging it for, and bi idnin shar'iyyan, with the permission of the sharia. So this is very important, and the reason he says he brings this in here is because when it comes to our transactions, we need to have the permission of the sharia before we do just transactions. So if someone wants to do something such as gambling, this person's taking money and giving money without a permission from Allah. And this is of course, even if people were to say, "Oh, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the loss," this is still impermissible because you have no permission from the Sharia. So it's important that the actions that we do, we look back to the Sharia when it comes to these issues, and it's not just I'm happy with the losses, or we're both happy, so leave us to our own business. No, this is something Allah has given prescriptions for people so that they don't oppress each other. And if they were left to their own, they would be oppressing people. And so this is the beginning of this is like the meaning of bay'. And so looking at what Abu Shujaa, he says here, rahimahullah, he says al-buyu'u thalathatu ashya'. And so he says there's three types of bay', and there's more than this. There's actually more than this, but he brings three different types that he's going to talk about. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So the first of these types of bay' that he brings here, he's going to say bay'u aynin mushahadatin faja'izun. So bay', which is selling ayn, and we're going to use this term ayn a lot. Ayn is an actual individual object. It's this, like say this iPhone. This iPhone is ayn. It's like an actual object. It's not something that someone is getting on, like an order with certain descriptions. No, this is an actual object. This is Dawood's iPhone, with this particular serial number. Or like this is that book right there that you have this color, and it's not just the color, it's like this particular book. And it's something that's individual. So this is ayn. So he says here, bay'u aynin mushahadatin faja'iz. And so this is, and mushahada is the other condition here, which is something that's seen. So, and this also goes back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and it says, "La tabi' ma laysa indak." And so, like, don't sell something that's not with you. So the person needs to see this thing. So if I had a phone, and you guys didn't see my phone, but I said, I'm going to sell you my phone, and maybe I give the description, but you never saw it. I need to make sure that you've seen this item so that you can make the decision properly. And so this, if you've seen it, then it's okay for you to do it. But if you haven't seen it, then in this case, this would go into a different category. And like the Shafi'is would say that this person needs to see it. Like the strongest opinion in the Shafi'i, that this person needs to see the item that he's going to buy. And this would also go back to the prohibition that the Prophet ﷺ, he naha an bay' al-gharar, which is like he prohibited the selling of something with gharar, which is like ambiguity, or something that is, you don't know exactly what it is. So it's something that's like there's unknown characteristics about it that you need to know about. And so this is the first one he says here of the three types that he's going to bring. He says bay'u aynin mushahadatin faja'izun. And so this is permissible, this is the actual thing that the person saw. You can sell this thing that the actual person saw. And then he says here bay'u shay'in mawsufin fi dhimma. And then the second type that he gives here, he says bay' shay'in. So this is selling something mawsufin fi dhimma. And this is something that is that mawsuf is something with a bunch of characteristics that you would write down about something that's a characteristic. And fi dhimma, and dhimma is kind of you could say the credit of someone. That this person, when he sells something, and this is called salam, we'll talk about this later, is that when this person, say he's going on Amazon, and he's going to go look for a certain item on Amazon, he's not buying an individual item. Such as like on eBay, maybe somebody has an actual item that they're selling. But like on Amazon, a lot of times you just have a bunch of different items. You have like say you have like a bunch of iPhone cases or something. I'm just going to go for example. So you have a bunch of iPhone cases. You're just going to buy one. It has all the descriptions on there. And then something's going to come to you, and that fits the description, and that's what you got. But you're not buying an individual one. This would be called salam. And it's almost like a dain, which is giving a loan to somebody. We'll talk about it, but it's like the opposite of it. So it's like this person puts down his money, and the other person needs to come with the item, as opposed to like a dain, where somebody puts down their money and the person comes back with that money later, but he's going to come back with the item later. If that makes sense.
Can you repeat that just one more time?
So this is, we'll go into it in more detail, the salam, but this is kind of like a dain, or like it's kind of like a loan, because this person is giving you money, and instead of you coming back with money, that same money in return, you're coming back with the item in return. And it needs to have all of the descriptions. He says, mawsufun fi dhimma. So this person needs to give you that money, or he needs to give you that item that you ordered with all of the descriptions. We'll talk about this in more detail later. And he says, فَجَائِزٌ إِذَا وُجِدَتِ الصِّفَةُ عَلَى مَا وُصِفَ بِهِ. So he says, and this is permissible if, with the condition that the sifa or the characteristics are as it was described. So if you got this thing and it was as it was described, then this is permissible to do. But if it was not as described, then you have a problem. All right. And then the third type. So this is the first one. The first one he said bay'u ayn mushahada, which is something that's actually an individual object, that is unique, that is seen. This is permissible. Then also buying or selling something that is like an item, not an actual, not an individual item, where it's something that's given all the characteristics, and then you're ordering it, in per se. And so this is also permissible if it's as it was described. The third type here is بيع عين غائبة لم تشاهد فلا يجوز. And then this is the third type that he brings here, is selling something, an actual item that is not present, that was not seen. فلا يجوز. So you guys haven't seen my car, all right? And let's say I have a car. You haven't seen my car, and I'm going to sell it to you. You can't. I can't have you buy it. This is an impermissible transaction. You haven't seen my car. It's not with me right now. I can't show it to you, and I'm going to sell you something that is not with me and that you haven't seen. This is a problem. Now, say I had a car before, and I'm going to sell it to you. You've seen it before. You know my car is there. You know, okay, he's got like a Toyota Camry or something in 2012 or whatever, and so you've seen the car before, but you haven't seen it for a while. I can tell you this if it is as it was in the last time, and this is something that doesn't change its condition since the last time you would have seen it, and normally. But if it's something that you haven't seen, the person hasn't seen this item, and it's not present currently, then he can't sell it. He needs to make sure that it's currently viewable for this person, and that it's present, or he's seen it previously, and it's something that doesn't change normally, like from the time. So if someone was going to sell you, say I have a bunch of bananas, and you saw the bananas yesterday or the day before, I can't sell you these bananas unless you see them, because this is something that normally changes. Like maybe they go bad. Maybe like by the time they got you, they're all of them. It's like there's like bugs all over it. So of course, like, this is something that if it changes a lot, then no. But if it's something that stays after a while, and then the person has seen it, and it's something that stays normally, then in this case you can sell it. But of course, if there's a problem or a difference, then this gives them a chance to go back on that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So this is these are the three types that he mentions here, and there's other versions of these things that will come in later books, inshallah. So now he's going to talk about some of the conditions for selling something, for the item itself. For the item itself to be sold, here's some of the conditions for it. He says, first thing, وَيَصِحُّ بَيْعُ كُلِّ طَاهِرٍ مَمْلُوكٍ مُنْتَفِعٍ بِهِ. And so these are the conditions that he brings here, and he's going to say the opposite of it right after this. The first thing he says here, the bay' kulli tahirin. So everything that is tahir. This thing needs to be, in essence, it needs to be something that's pure. So if someone is going to, if someone's going to sell like a dog in the Shafi'i madhab, is najis. All of it is najis. You can't sell a dog. This is something that is not tahir, so you can't sell the dog.
The whole thing, or just
the whole dog? The whole dog is najis. If its saliva is najis, this is the cleanest part of his body. The rest of him's got to be even more najis. This is the view of the Shafi'is. All of the dog is, yeah, kind of, yeah, or like qiyas al-awla, yeah. So all of the dog is najis, and the same thing is like khinzir. This is also najis. Also the same thing like this is khamr. So you have like wine. Wine is najis. So in all of these things that are najis, you can't sell them. This is not permissible to sell. What if this is something that's mutanajjis? You know the difference between najis and mutanajjis, right? So a najis is something that its essence is najis, such as like the dog, its essence is najis. But mutanajjis is like I've got a coat that my kid peed on. I can wash it and sell it, or I can sell it before washing it, and the person can clean it. You know, so this is the difference between najis and mutanajjis. If it's just mutanajjis, where someone could wash it and clean it and get rid of it, he can sell this item. But if it's and he's going to talk about this afterwards. But if it's something that's not tahir, then you cannot sell this item. All right. So the next thing he's going to talk about is mamlukin. So this is very important as well. This thing needs to be owned, like by the person who's selling it. So you can't sell something that you don't own. So say I'm going to buy something, I can't sell you that thing I'm going to buy. You know, after I've taken this thing into possession, I've taken it into my possession, I've taken it, then I can sell it. But I can't sell you something that I'm going to buy, or something that is somebody else's. This is something that needs to be the person who is owner. He has the right to sell it, and if he doesn't own this thing, then he has no right to sell this thing unless it's on behalf of someone else, which is that other person actually is the one that's selling, and he's just the intermediator, which would be called the wakil. We'll talk about that in the future, inshallah. So this thing needs to be owned by this person. And so then the next thing he says, muntafa'in bihi, and that this is something that is beneficial. So of the things that you can't sell are such as like books of kufr. Books of kufr, they're not beneficial, they hurt. Or like they're something that are going to destroy people's minds, destroy their aqidah, or things that have no benefit, like sharan. There's no benefit in this from like one of these ways, so you wouldn't be able to sell the books of kufr. Or the same thing, like if someone wants to sell musical instruments. There's no benefit in this. Like this is something, the benefit is not, and there's no benefit in it when it comes to the sharia. The sharia says there's no benefit in this. This is something that's haram. Or if someone wants to sell a couple grains of rice. I got a couple grains of rice, give me $5. You know, like, of course this is nonsense. And there's no benefit for these. And 2 grains of rice by themselves, they have no benefit. It's not going to give any benefit to anybody. But if you had like, okay, a handful of rice, maybe this is going to get you a benefit. But 2 grains, no. And the same thing like bugs, scorpions, these things don't have benefits normally. Even if there are strange people that collect them, the Shafi'i method won't look into that. They won't look into the fact that some of the kings or like people, they like to buy wild animals. They don't look into this. It's impermissible. They just say across, we don't look into the strange scenarios. We look into the general thing that this is not something that's beneficial. Buying scorpions is not beneficial, so this is not permissible. And so and this is of the things that, of course, this goes back to the what Allah says, that la ta'kulu amwalakum bil batil. So you can't take somebody's, when you're doing a buying and selling, you're taking this person's money, and you need to take it with right. You can't take this without a right. And so even if you are happy about stealing somebody's money and they're happy about you stealing your money without that, it's still wrong. You know. Of course, this person, if they give you something, that's something else. But this is important when it comes to these things, that this person has something that they're giving you that is beneficial when you're buying it from them. And so now he's going to go into like the mafhum, or what is understood from these first 3 conditions he gave. So he says, وَلَا يَصِحُّ بَيْعُ عَيْنٍ نَجِسَةٍ. So something that is ayn and najis, as I mentioned before, a dog is not permissible to buy or to sell. So you can't buy or sell dogs, or something that is najis, such as like manure. You can't buy and sell manure. And also, and even though there is a benefit to manure, like people, like farmers, they know there's a benefit to a manure, but when it's a manure in that form, you can't sell it as manure. If you're gonna say that someone was going to deliver it and you pay for the delivery fee, you're paying for the delivery fee and you're not paying for the manure. Does that make sense? But you can't buy and sell manure. Yeah, you can't buy and sell it. Yes, there's benefit to it, but it's not just in it itself. So you would say there's a fee for me to deliver it to you, and my delivery fee is this. But you're not buying the manure; you're buying the delivery. If that makes sense. And this is similar with dogs. Dogs are permissible in certain cases, such as there's permission, like the permissibility for dogs comes to like for hunting animal or for guarding and whatnot. Of course, not inside the house, but for hunting or guarding. And these are permissibility also for like shepherding, like a shepherd dog. These are uses that are permissible for that. But you can't sell the dog, but you could sell the service of you training the dog. Or you could sell the amount of food that you had to put into bringing the dog to his size and like his training and whatnot. You can sell that as not as the dog itself, but as the actual benefit that you've given. Your teaching for the dog is this. And so but the dog itself can't be sold or bought. And this also comes from another hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that its thaman is khabith. And so it's not permissible for the thaman of the dog itself is not permissible.
What if the buyer doesn't frame it like that?
It's problematic. If the buyer himself is selling it as a dog, that's problematic. Yeah.
The seller isn't allowed to buy it even if he's like.
Yeah, he needs to frame it in the proper way. And Allah Ta'ala. So he says here, وَلَا يَصِحُّ بَيْعُ عَيْنٍ نَجِسَةٍ. And this is the one, it's not the mutn najis, but this is the najis itself. Ayn najis. Like this is the thing that's najis from its very get-go. وَلَا مَا لَا مَنْفَعَةَ فِيهِ. So, and also something that there's no benefit to it. And also he says here, وَالرِّبَى فِي الذَّهْبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْمَتْرُمَاتِ. So he's going to go into the next part here. He's going to riba. And he's going to talk about what this is. And like linguistically, riba it means something ziyada. It means something that's extra, like something that has been brought to fruition. And so this is where it would come from. And there's multiple types of riba. And so one type of the riba is like a nasi'ah, which is something that he's not going to talk about this here, but this is when someone gets a dain or a loan from somebody else. And then what the Arabs used to do, which is known now, but the Arabs used to do, they would give the loan to somebody else, and then when the time came for this person to pay, he would say, either pay the loan or add a certain amount of money to it, and you can pay it later. And then you would keep adding some. He would either pay the loan as it was, or he would add something on top for him to delay the payment. And so this is called nasi'ah, and which means like to make something put later. And this is the type of riba which is mentioned in the Quran. And of course, like this is of the kaba'ir, and this is a very, very serious type of riba. And so this is one of the type of riba. And also there's other types of riba, such as which is like riba al-fadl, which is when people are exchanging two types of things, where riba, which we'll talk about, this type of riba, it's something that runs between it. It's something that this is a type of transaction that has riba in it. So if you change two things of the same type, such as I've got gold here, and you've got gold here, and if I change, everything has to be the same, because there's riba that comes, that ziyada will come on one side, that extra thing will come on one side or the other, and if this comes, it's impermissible. And then there's also riba that happens where if someone was doing like a money transaction, and then say we're gonna change like euros for dollars, and I'm gonna give you euro, and you're gonna give me the dollars, like whatever we decide what the price is for this, and we do this. But he says, I'm gonna pay you tomorrow the dollars. I don't have the dollars right now. I'm gonna pay you tomorrow. This is not permissible. This is another type of riba, like riba al-yad, which is where someone he delays that payment going back and forth. We'll talk about this as a type of transaction, the currency exchange. It's called sarf. And this is important that people understand when they're changing money from one hand to another, or changing currencies, they need to do this right now and it's done. They need to do it at the same thing. If they don't have, the other person doesn't have the money now, you don't do the transaction until he has the money. All right? It's another type of riba, and also riba al-qard, which is that there's a type of extra benefit for someone who's giving a dain for somebody, and this person who is gonna get this, he's getting a loan. So this person gets a loan from somebody, and this person, instead of just paying back what's in the loan, he has a condition to get something extra for him. Since he's giving him a loan, he's doing something for him. He wants to pay him back for the fact that he's giving him a loan, not just the money itself. He wants something extra. So he wants him to marry his daughter or something, or he wants him to like let him use his card for a while. This is something that's extra on top of the loan, and he can't be connected to it, and this is impermissible. This is another type of riba. So these are types of riba that it's important people understand, so that they don't ever fall into this, because this is of the biggest and greatest of sins. And of course, this is taking something without like a right. And so one of the definitions that is given here for riba is مقابلة عوض بآخر مجهول التماثل في معيار الشرع حالة العقد أو مع تأخير من عوضين أو أحدهما. So he says here مقابلة العوض, which is that you're exchanging two things for another thing, بآخر مجهول التماثل, with something that is unknown, the tamathul, which is something that's like something else. You don't know what the difference is between these two things. في معيار الشرع, like in the view of the shariah. So this is something that maybe you think you know this, but if the shariah says no, this needs to be a certain way, then you need to look at that. حالة العقد, and at the time of the aqd, or with أو مع تأخير في العوضين. So, or like something is later than the other in the two things that are being exchanged for each other, or one of them. So this is one of the definitions. Some of the definitions they come, and this is trying to encompass most of these definitions. Of course, I'm reading this from Fath al-Qarib, and going through some of the ta'rifat for this particular portion of the book. And so going into what he says here, where does riba occur? Of the places riba occurs is, he says here, وَالرِّبَا فِي الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَالْمَطْعُومَاتِ. So he says, riba, it occurs in dhahab and fidda. These are currencies, This is like the meaning behind it is that these are currencies. وَالْمَطْعُومَات, and also in things that are eaten, like matumat, anything that you would eat. So, and this comes from the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, الذهب بالذهب والفضة بالفضة. So he talks about that, and the gold is with gold and fidda is with fidda. And also then he mentioned al-burr bil-burr, and that also like grain, like burr is a type of like wheat is with wheat, like these same things. And also al-milh bil-milh, and he mentions also the milh, which is salt, with salt. So you wouldn't necessarily think of this as food, but it's something that's eaten. It's something that's used for the preservation of food. And he says, in this hadith, he says, yadan bi yad. And so he says, and this is yadan bi yad, that needs, or what tamar bid tamar. Also a tamar, which is of course the dates with dates. Yadan bi yad, that this has to be done at the hand to hand. And then also he says, and if the jints, or like the type, is different, then, or also yadan bi yad, at the same type, mithlan bi mithl. So that needs to be the same, hand to hand, and the same type, at the same weight, and whatnot, mithlan bi mithl. But if the jinses are different, and تلف الأجناس فبيعوا كيف شئتم أو كما قال. Then if the ajnas, like the different types, are different than each other, then you can sell it whatever amount that you wish, because you're trading it, and if it's a different type. But if it's the same type of object, then this is something that riba comes in, and there's certain conditions for this. And so the thing that we would look between, we have fidda, al-dhahab wal-fidda. So we have the gold and silver. The meaning behind this is these are currencies. That's the basic meaning behind them. These are currencies that are used, that hold value. And so this riba would fall into this, and like that is like the currencies that we use, like the fiat currencies, whether it's dollars, euros, whatever it is, Egyptian pounds. All of this would have riba that's in it. And so also, well, if we look at the rest of the hadith, we have dates, we also have milh, and we also have these things. What are the things that are in common between dates, milh, and also the burr, which is so we have dates, we have salt, and we also have grains. Like these are all things that are eaten, or there's something that's used alongside of eating, like such as milh. So all of these also, the meaning that the Shafi'is they take from this hadith is that the common denominator with this is that these are all things that are eaten. And so anything that's eaten, riba runs through it. Alright? And so so he says here, the Abu Shujaa, he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الذَّهَبِ بِالذَّهَبِ وَلَا الْفِضَّةِ كَذَلِكَ إِلَّا مُتَمَاثِلًا نَقْدًا. And so he says that it's not permissible to sell dhahab, or gold, for gold, except with and the same for fidda, which is silver, except mutamathila, which is the same weight. It needs to be the exact same weight of the gold. The gold needs to weigh the exact same amount, like the actual gold itself. Naqdan, which is that this is something that happens right now. It's hand to hand. That it happens as a completed transaction with them. وَلَا بَيْعُ مَا بِتَاعَهُ حَتَّى يَقْبِضَهُ. And this is also another thing. We'll look at this first part here. But it's important that when we have any exchange, a currency exchange, it needs to be the same. If it's the same currency, it needs to be the same amount. So even if someone's getting change, someone can't charge from that currency for doing change. So I'm going to change for a 50. And someone's going to say, oh, you want change for a 50? I'm going to give you $48. Like, that doesn't work. And because he can't take $2 for this exchange, this is the same type. It needs to be the exact same. And so he can't ask for something extra for this change. And say someone has gold, they have a gold necklace that has a bunch of embroidery and all kinds of fancy stuff on it, and he wants to buy this with gold. If he's buying this with gold, it needs to be the same weight. Even though a lot of work went into this necklace and whatnot, it has to be the same weight. So what do? You get silver and pay for it. You take the gold, buy silver, and pay for it with silver. At the worth of it. But you can't use gold to buy this. If you're going to use gold to buy this, then it would be a problematic transaction. Same thing with silver. You're buying a silver ring with silver, and it's the same type of thing. You have to buy it at the same weight. And this is important that people understand this as well. And same thing with currency exchange, as I mentioned that. If you're doing currency exchange, everything has to be at the same time. You can agree on the price if it's a different currency. If it's the same currency, it has to be exact same. It has to be exact same, and it has to be now. It can't be later and whatnot. So he says, وَلَا بَيْعُ مَبْتَاعَهُ حَتَّى يَقْبِضَهُ. And this is the next thing. He says it's not permissible to وَلَا, and this is like معطوف على لا يجوز, وَلَا بَيْعُ مَبْتَاعَهُ حَتَّى يَقْبِضَهُ. So anything that he has sold, or what he has bought, مَبْتَاعَهُ is that he bought. اتخاذ البيع. So a lot of times you have افتعال. افتعال a lot of times this wazn will have the meaning of اتخاذ or أخذ. So you have like the thing that he took into بيع. So اتخاذ البيع or أخذ البيع, which is like that he bought, something that he bought. So بيع ما بتاعه حتى يقبضه. So he can't sell this thing that he bought until he takes it into his possession. And this also comes from the prohibition that the Prophet ﷺ said, and don't sell until you have taken these things. When one of the Sahaba was coming to him and he was selling something without doing this, without taking into possession. So maybe you have someone that comes into the souk, he buys something from somebody, he doesn't pick it up. He goes to another guy, he says, "Oh, you want to buy this from me?" And he tells him to pick it up from the first guy. He never took it into his possession. This isn't impermissible. He needs to take it into his possession, or have someone take it into his possession for him. So, yeah.
What drop shipping?
No problem. And the difference between this is the person who you send the shipping to. There's multiple ways to look at this. One, it would be salam. Yeah, you would look at, when we go into Bab salam, this would be drop shipping. That's the most thing. But say you have like Amazon fulfillment. So you have Amazon that you ship something to Amazon. Say you have a product and you have someone else that makes it. And then Amazon, you will send this product from that person, you will send it to Amazon. That person sending it and taking it to Amazon is on your behalf. It's as if you took it into possession, because he's on your behalf. And so then when you sell it from Amazon and then they give it to those people, they're doing it on behalf of you. And even though you personally didn't take it, your wakil, or the person that's on your behalf, took it for you, as if you took it. So it takes the ruling of that. Same thing if someone was to have a car. And they were to go to they used to have suq sayrat here, and where everyone's selling cars and trading. So if someone had a car and they were selling it, they need to have someone take this car into possession, so which means by moving it. So you'd have someone go get the car, move it a little bit, and then you can sell it afterwards, if you had someone that did this for you. So, and that's important that someone takes something into the possession before they sell it. And of course, this is because maybe this item never goes anywhere, and it just raised like a bunch of price. Like its price got raised a ton, and nothing happened to it. Like from the first person, a bunch of people are changing money and nothing happened. Nothing moved. So, this is of the prohibitions and bear. I hope that's clear. Any questions? So the next thing is that he'll mention here is he says, وَلَا بَيْعُ اللَّحْمِ بِالْحَيَوَانِ. There's also another prohibition that the Prophet ﷺ said not to do, was not to sell or to trade lahm, which is meat, with something that live animal. And so this is it comes in hadith that's mursal, but that has been taken as evidence for not selling this hadith, or not selling the meat with a live animal. And this is important also because it's similar, but there's a difference between this. Like the live animal is going to be continuing its growth, or something happens to it, maybe it's sick, maybe it's not the same. But so these things need to be like the lahm. If you want to trade it with an animal, sell the animal, get the money, buy the lahm, or the opposite. Sell the lahm with money, buy the animal. But you can't do this right without something in between it. And so, and then he also says here, going back to what is permissible from some of these transactions, he said not la yajuz except this way or that way. He says وَيَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الذَّهَبِ بِالْفِضَّةِ مُتَفَاضِلًا نَقْدًا. So he says, and it's permissible to sell dhahab wal fidda, or like to trade dhahab, which is gold, for silver. So you can trade these two. There's a currency exchange, mutafadila, at different weights. Whatever you choose, the price, this is up to you guys. You can choose whatever, and when you're changing, when it's one type to another type, you can choose whatever the price is that you want to sell. And this is the decision of the person who's doing the currency exchange. He can choose whatever price he wishes. And so then he also says naqdan, which means that this is a completed transaction. So this has to be right away. Like normally it needs to be something that's right away, that's in the same sitting, and that the people take it into the possession before they go away from each other. So this means like in the same sitting, they take both of the sides of that. So if it's gold and silver, this person takes the gold and this person takes the other person's silver, and then that's finished when they're in the sitting. Then they go away. But that person can't say, I'm going to pay you tomorrow. No, it has to be now. Yeah, all of the sarf, this is called sarf, which is that currency exchange. It has to be done right away. And someone can't, also like say someone was wanting to sell someone. They're going to sell them money and they want to get a different currency in return. They need to be with this person when they send them the zel, and this person needs to get the money while they have received the zel. Once they receive the zel, or they know Ghaliban it probably went through, then they can take the money in the other currency. But they can't send the money first and then come and wait a long time and then get the money afterwards. So it's important that if it's a different jins, then they need to, like if it's a different type of currency that they're getting, they need to do it right away. At the same time, it needs to be, even though yes they're sending it, maybe there's a little bit of a delay, maybe that's something. But if they know Ghaliban this person already sent it, and it's going to make it to them, maybe that's something you will look at. But you can't like send it from one person and then wait a day or later and then give them that. Yeah, you have a question?
What if you send somebody money and they pick it up in a different currency?
It's similar. This is kind of similar if the intention is to pick it up in a different currency, or if they have the option to do it. This is different. So if you send someone money, I think some of these people do it, where they will send people money. They will send them, say they send them like $400, okay? And when it comes, the person says, "Do you want dollars or do you want janae?" All right. And here, this is where the transaction would happen here, because your right is dollars. And if you want to take other than that, then the transaction happens while you're with him right now. So that would happen. That change would be right there and then, as opposed to something that was intended from the get-go. If you told him, "I'm sending you one currency that will come at a different, that will arrive in a different currency," then you have to. It gets more complicated there. Of course, you can have somebody that is your wakil that changes it on the spot when you first send it. So if you're going to do that, you can have someone that's going to exchange it at the spot when he sends it. He's exchanging it, and it's known that he's exchanging with the person that's sending it to you in a different currency. But it's important that these things are done in the proper order, because of course maybe the price of this changes. You know, when the time that you were expecting, the price is going to change, and so you need to know when the actual currency exchange happened. I hope that's clear. And just a strange note that came up was some people were saying that selling things on the black market, like currency exchange on the black market, is haram. This is something in this is always between the people, the two people that are doing the currency exchange. It's between them. And of course, no one should be harming other people with stuff. But this is an agreement between them and them. They're not held to like these other ordinances and whatnot that maybe some people say. And this is a strange view, to be honest, because like when we look at these, this is not a shart. A shart is that the person can do it whatever he wishes, and this is what is known. Wallahu musta'an. Okay, so وَكَذَلِكَ الْمَتْوُمَاتِ, and so he also talks about this, the same thing like we talked about the fidda with ذهب والفضة. So like exchanging currency exchange, same thing goes with if we're going to exchange different types of food. So I'm going to exchange rice. I'm going to exchange one type of rice for another. So he says here, لا يجوز بيع الجنس منها بمثله إلا متماثلا نقدا. So I'm going to exchange long grain rice for short grain rice. This is all rice orders. The same thing. I can't exchange this except that he says لا يجوز بيع الجنس منها بمثله. You can't sell one type of it with something that's the same type, except متماثلا, the same weight. Naqda, at the same time. Naqda, which means right away. So this all needs to be the same type. So if I'm going to exchange long grain rice for short grain rice, it needs to be exact same. It needs to be the same weight. And even though this one's more expensive, okay, this one's more expensive, but if we're changing this, then we have to do this. If I want to get that price for the more expensive one, then sell it, get the money, and buy it. You know, like sell it, get money, grab the money, and then pay with the other one with the money. But you can't do this without a separate transaction between this. If you want to get the different prices in, otherwise it's going to be exact same weight with exact same weight. And this is the same thing, like whether that's for grains or like tamar at the other in another place. if someone was going to exchange one type of tamar for another, it has to, even if that one's very expensive. So it's a sukkari, and this one is just like some cheap ghetto version. So this is, you would have to exchange it for money and then do this. And this also comes in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in the Fath al-Khaybar, that they were coming to the Prophet ﷺ with wonderful dates. And the Prophet ﷺ said, are all the dates like this? He said, no, not all the dates are like this, but rather I was selling 2 sa of this, and I was selling a certain amount, like 2 of sa, which is like a big portion, which is almost like a gallon. I was selling 2 of this for 1 of that, 1 of the good ones. So he said, don't do this, but rather sell this one and then get the money and buy the other one. And so you have to make that transaction. And even though we'd say, okay, this is just putting money between it, no, that money between it, make sure that everyone's rights gets done, and this also stops the riba from coming into play between these 2 similar things. And so this is where it goes back with that. That's some of the evidence for that. إلا متماثلا نقدا, that this has to be done with the same type at the same time that this is traded. He says, وَيَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الْجِنْسِ مِنْهَا بِغَيْرِهِ مُتَفَاضِلًا نَقْدًا. And so he says, and it's okay for someone to do a different type of jins, which is different types. بَيْعُ الْجِنْسِ مِنْهَا بِغَيْرِهِ جِنْسِهِ. So like with a different type of thing, he can sell this with a different type of thing, مُتَفَاضِلًا, at whatever he wants to, whatever price he wants to do in trade, he can choose, because it's a different type. Naqda, that this has to be like done in a naqda, as we mentioned before, something that halan, that it's done in a completed transaction at that time. And so this is, of course, if someone wants to trade urz for qamh, so if they want to trade rice for wheat, they do it however they wish. How much is this going to be worth, and you can trade it however you wish. But if it was urz with other urz, like rice with other rice, it has to be the same. And so he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الْغَرَرِ. And so this is also another very important principle that goes through a lot of things. We'll come back to this principle, which is you're not allowed to sell something that is unknown or that is ambiguous or not properly described. And this is the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited selling بَيْعُ الْغَرَرِ, which is this something that's unknown. Of course, you need to know what you're buying, and the person needs to know what he's buying when he's buying. And without that, then this goes into the prohibition of that. And like that is someone that hasn't seen the product. Maybe the product isn't as described, or the product is unknown. You don't know what is going to come out of this product, and whatnot. So this is something that this needs to be known, what people are selling for each other. And so, of course, like of the conditions for selling is that each person, from the seller and the buyer, they need to know what this item is, and they both need to know what this item is, or else if they don't know about what this item is, then this is not permissible. They need to know what they're buying and selling. And also of the other conditions that he didn't mention here is that the person needs to be able to give this item to that person. He needs to be able to give him to come through with this item. I can't sell you a bird in the sky. Or I can't sell you a fish in the sea. I have to actually have that fish to sell it to you. I can't sell you something that I can't. Or if I had like I had like a horse that ran away, I can't sell you that horse that ran away. And so it needs to be something that I'm able to give you and or that you're able to get easily. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So these are coming back into, this is kind of the conditions of buying and selling that he brought in here. And he talked about riba, which is important that we understand what riba falls into, what types of things have riba. And this is the type of riba that is it's not necessarily talking about, this is not the one that would go into like loans, as we would think of interest. A lot of times people, when they think of riba, they think interest. But riba has a much broader meaning in the sharia than interest. Interest is one type of riba, but there's a much broader meaning of interest, or like of riba, than just the meaning that we have interest. Any questions before we move on? Yeah.
Question. So you mentioned food being from the same origin, like rice, trading for rice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that also apply to like meat? I'm assuming, like chicken for chicken. Would you say that?
As far as I would think if it's chicken for chicken, yeah.
So then when it comes down to that, like for example, there's chicken breast, you have like chicken thigh, you have chicken legs, and it talked about the weight being the same, but then you have bones in there, and so is the value different? You see, so that's a question that.
Yeah, that's a question. It'd be best to trade everything to money and then buy it with money, to be safe on that. Allah Ta'ala alam. And so the next thing that he goes into, are there any other questions?
Yeah. بيع شيء موصوف في الذمة.
We'll talk about this. This is a salam. Salam. This is like something that you say, I'm going to get you an item that has this. Or you tell me, I want you to get me, Dawood, I want you to get me a book with these conditions. And I say, I'm going to get you a book for this, give me the money. You give me the money, and I'm going to come back with a book that is described. I don't necessarily have it now, but I'm going to get you it. So, and this is, but it needs to be described. If it is as described, then this is a valid transaction. If it's not as described, then it's not valid. And we'll talk about the details of this later, inshallah. This is, he calls it bay' here, but technically it's called salam, which is a different thing. It's not necessarily bay'.
What does dhimma mean?
Dhimma is this person's credit. You would almost say it's credit. And we'll use this term a lot. Dhimma, it means like this person's credit. It's like upon him to pay back on this thing. So you'd say this thing is in this person's dhimma, it's in his credit. He's got to pay this. He's got a debt on his dhimma. Like this dain is fi dhimmatihi. So he's got to pay back on this. And we also would use this sometimes with ibadat. So we say that this person, say this person he made a halaf about something. And then he broke his halaf. Now he has kafara. So now he needs to pay, like whether it's like the 10, he needs to feed 10 people, or he needs to give clothes to 10 people. But this is in his dhimma. It's upon him to do this. It's like his debt. Or someone has som in their dhimma. So it's a debt that's upon this person. But this is a term that's used, which is kind of, I guess the loosest translation I can give it, or like the closest of this, is like credit. If that makes sense. Yeah. Anything else? All right. And let me know about some of the wordings. If you don't understand any of the wordings, I want to make sure that you all understand the Arabic of this as well, especially if you're getting close to that. Yeah. The next thing he's going to go into is he's going to talk about al-khiyar. And the khiyar means choice. So he's going to say this, and this comes from the hadith. He says, al-mutabayyani bil-khiyar and bil-khiyari ma lam yatafarraqa. And so he says, al-mutabayyan, these are the two people that are buying and selling, bil-khiyar. They're able to make the decision to go back on their selling. So as long as they're selling, say I'm sitting with you guys, and I make a deal with you. I'm like, I'm going to sell you my laptop. I'm going to sell it to you for $1,000. And you're like, oh, okay, $1,000. Okay, got you. I give you the laptop. You give me the money or whatever, and we're still sitting together. Anytime while we're still sitting together, I can say, no, I can't do it. Give me back my money. And I have the right to do this while we're sitting together. But if we separated from each other, if I walked outside the door, closed the door, then I knocked on the door, and said, no. Khalas, and it's done. So as long as they haven't separated from each other, then in this case they have the choice to go back on the deal. And this is something I believe it was Ibn Abbas that he would separate from people when he would make a sale. He would go away from them and come back. He would like separate himself from it and come back, just so it'd be final. There's no more talk about it, and he doesn't want anyone to go back on the decision. He made the deal. He would walk away and come back. And of course, like this is different for each person, like their situation. Like if you're in the shop, you're still in the shop, but you're walking around the shop, you're still in the shop. As opposed to like if we're in an apartment, we make the deal here, and then I go outside the apartment, we go down, or maybe we leave together. We haven't separated from each other. We walk for 3 days, we're still together, we haven't separated from each other for any time, then we're still in the khiyar. Like we still have the decision to go back on it. As long as we haven't separated. And this is the view of like the Shafi'i method when it comes to like physically separating. This would be understood here. So this is, the person can go back as long as he hasn't separated from each other. And this comes from the hadith al-bayani fi al-khiyari ma lam yatafarraqa. That the two people are selling, they can change whenever they wish, as long as they haven't separated from each other. And he says, وَلَهُمَا أَنْ يَشْتَرِطَا الْخِيَارَ إِلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ. So what if they want to say, let's make a deal, but I get 3 days to try it out. If I'm not happy after 3 days, I can go back on it. They can do this up to 3 days, but more than 3 days, no. And if one person says, I'll give it to you, and the other person says, no, I don't need it, but he agrees to the other person doing it, say, I'm selling you my car. And I'm going to say, for you, I'm going to say, hey man, I don't know if I can actually go without having my car for like 3 days, but let's say these 3 days, if I can do it, then it's okay. But I have the right to come back. And you say, okay, but I don't need the money. Like, you're down with, without me going back on the bet, or without you going back on the bet, saying. And so if one person goes down on his right and says, no, I don't want the khiyar, but he agrees with the other, then it's only for that other person. So it doesn't have to be both people that make the decision. It can be either one of them, or both of them, or none of them, to make this condition that they say, I can go back on the sale after whatever time they say, whether it's a day, whether it's half a day, or as long as it doesn't exceed 3 days, they can make this a part of the condition. And taking back items, sometimes this is like a lot of times stores will say, we'll take back your item for a 30-day warranty, guarantee, whatever. This is something that's that if they do this is up to them to do, but it's not like their right. It's not like the right of the buyer to say that I have the right to take back my item after all this time, even though there's nothing wrong with the item. There's nothing wrong with the item. You have no right to take it back unless there's something wrong with the actual item. And if you want to take it back and they agree to it, then they are agreeing to let go of something that's their right. They're agreeing to come down from what is their right, is that this was a done transaction. And he's not going to go into this type of transaction is called iqala, which is the taking back something without a real excuse, without there being any problem with the actual item. And this is mustahab for someone to take it back, but they don't have to. They don't have to do that. So he's going to say, so after this, he says, up into 3 days. And then he says, وَإِذَا وُجِدَ بِالْمَبِيعِ عَيْبٌ فَلِلْمُشْتَرِ رَدُّهُ. So he says, and if there's something wrong, the aib, something wrong, that normally shouldn't be wrong with this item, if there's something wrong with this thing, and he finds that there's something wrong with this item that he purchased, فَلِلْمُشْتَرِ رَدُّهُ. Then the person who bought it, he can take it back. That's his right to take it back if there's something wrong with it. And so, of course, if there's nothing wrong with it, as I mentioned, he doesn't have any right to take it back if it was done and there's no condition made to be able to take it back. And so, so this is his right to take it back if there is something wrong with it. So I get my phone and the screen doesn't work. Okay, I can take it back. That's my right, and give me back my money. And so then also he says here, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الثَّمَرَةِ مُطْلَقًا. He's going to go to another area. And also, before we move on, another thing is when he takes it back, this is his right, but he needs to take it back right away. If he delays taking back this item, then he loses his right to take it back. So say I got a computer, and one of the keys kept sticking, and I didn't take it back right away. I kept using it, blah, 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 blah. Me using it and going with this before taking it back to the company and saying, hey, this has got a problem, me using it is showing that I'm happy with this, even though it has this problem. It's showing that I'm happy with the transaction. I'm using it. But if I want to get it, if I want my right to take it back, I need to take it back right away. I need to take it back immediately after I find this problem. I need to take it back right away. Of course, if I need to pray, if I need to eat, and I need to put on my clothes to go to go get my car and then go over to the place, all this time is okay. But if I delayed it without any valid reason, then I lose my right to take it back. If they take it back, that's for them. That's them coming down on their right, but I lose my right in the shariah for that.
What if you delay it because of forgetfulness, it's just sitting there, and you procrastination maybe even too? You lose your rights.
Say you provided a service, you delayed taking the payment. Can you ask for the payment after the 3 day payment?
If you're providing a service, and then you want the payment.
You delayed the payment, accepting the payment.
Oh, okay. The right of the person is to get the payment at the beginning of the service. If he delays the payment, then this is him going down on his right. It's okay for him to go down and right and take it later. There's no problem with that. Yeah. And this will be talked about in ijara. We'll talk about this in ijara, inshallah. This is we call it ijara, which is like a service that you're renting someone's service, or you're buying a certain benefit, not necessarily a thing, but you're buying a benefit that someone does. Right. So next thing he goes into is he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الثَّمَرَةِ مُطْلَقًا إِلَّا بَعْدَ بُلُوغِ صَلَاحِهَا. And so he says that it's not permissible for someone to sell thamara, which is fruits, mutlaqan. Like he can't sell fruits until this fruit إِلَّا بَعْدَ بُلُوغِ صَلَاحِهَا. So it has to show that this has actually become ripe to somewhat. Or like say with, or it has to show that this is something that's usable as fruit. So say someone wants to sell fruit that's on a tree, but it's still like tiny apples that nobody can do anything with. You can't sell this. But if it's like big fat apples, and maybe it's not completely ripe, but if you cut it off, or if you left it for just a little bit of time, it's going to be ripe. It's pretty much ready, even though it's kind of sour. Okay, this is okay if it's going to get there. And same thing with like bananas. A lot of times people get the bananas green. But if you got the bananas before they're even going, if you would have cut them off and there's no benefit to them yet. No, you have to wait until it's actually beneficial, and when it shows the benefit to it, and then you can sell this. You can sell this afterwards. And so he says here that you can't sell thamara, any fruits, until it has shown the signs of ripeness. And of course, each fruit is different on what the signs of ripeness is for it. But if it's not going to be, usable, then you can't sell it. And of course, maybe this thing never comes like to fruition, and this person sold something that it goes bad. You know, like it's something that never even came to where you can actually use it. So he sold like something that later got infested before it even got to a ripe status. It got infested, or something happened, or it never was going to actually produce proper fruit. So the person needs to see this. And this also comes from the prohibition. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited this type of sale. And so the next thing that he goes into of the things that are prohibited with selling is وَلَا بَيْعُ مَا فِيهِ الرِّبَا بِجِنْسِهِ رَطْبًا إِلَّا اللَّبَنِ. So this is another view of the Shafi'is when it comes to if there's something that is that has riba in it, as we mentioned, the different types of things that have riba, like the food items. Then he can't sell this when it's wet, or like when it's wet for something else that's wet. Like for instance, I want to sell grapes for grapes. All right, and these are grapes, and they're not raisin forms; they're grapes, and they eventually come into raisin form. That's normally what they would be stored as this. So if I sold this amount of grapes for this amount of grapes, if I were to put it into raisin form, would they be different?
Yeah.
They would be different. So there's going to be ziyada that we don't know about. Like someone's going to get on the bum side of the deal that we don't know for sure. And so in this case, we'd have to wait. We can't sell this with another type of the same type, unless it's something that is not going to have this. Such as like he says, illa leban. So if we had, if someone was selling leban for another type, like milk for another type of milk, normally there's no difference. This is wet. There's no difference between you selling milk for other milk. Usually there's not going to be like someone comes out on the bad end of the deal. But when it comes to like grapes or tamar, like if someone's going to sell rotab, which is the fresh dates, someone's going to sell this for another type of rotab, and they're going to trade this at the same thing. Someone, if it was made into dates at the end of the day, someone's going to be coming out less than the other. All right, any other questions?
What was the word rataban mean again? Rataban?
Ratman means wet, or like that it's it means like linguistically wet, but it would mean like something that's not dried. Like if you had fresh fruit that has wet, it's wet on the inside. Like you cut an apple, it's wet. All right. And so the next chapter that he's going to go into is he's going to talk about salam. And so he talked about of the three types of bay'at that are permissible. The second one he mentioned was salam, and bay'at mawsufun fi dhimma. It's something that is described in the person's dhimma. And the salam in general, salam is also known as salaf, which is sometimes this is used to be like culture now. A lot of times people would say a salaf is a dain. But this, like in the original form, this was something that this person would put money now to get something in return later. And that is described. And so of the things that they would do is maybe a person who's a farmer, he needs money now to take care of his affairs, and at the end of when he gets his when his crop comes, he's going to be able to pay back on this. So he would let this person buy tamr in the future. So he'd say, you're going to buy this amount of food from me in the future, and I'll take the money now, and I'm going to give it to you at this other date. So in a sense, you're helping out the farmer that needs this money so that he can do his stuff. He's not going to get this payback on his money until the harvest comes. But he will say that I will provide you with how many kilos of tamr at this date. And he'll describe the tamr, like what type it is the one that you're wanting to get, with all of the characteristics that would change with its value. So he can do this, and this is a way to help out people, of course. And maybe it's not this, maybe it's someone else that is going to provide something else. The same thing as we mentioned, someone who's ordering. This is also a type of salam, that he's going to get the money right away, someone's going to pay right away, and then he's going to get this item that comes back at a certain time that is agreed upon. He's going to talk about some of the conditions for this type of transaction. And this is different than bay' al-ayn al-ghaib. So this is different than selling something that is an actual specific object that is not present. There's a difference between that. And it's also not for his property per se. It's not from his actual goods that he's selling, but rather he's, or like the salaf, he's not giving it from his actual goods. He's giving it from anything that meets this criteria. He needs to come back with it. But normally it would be from him. But like this is not, so if he had different dates that weren't from him, say all of his dates went bad, there was pestilence or something happened, and then he basically looked at this. He still he has a dain upon him to get this guy his dates according to the characteristics that he gave. So he has to get it from somewhere else and give it to him. We're going to start off with, he says here in Abu Shujaa, he says, فَصْلٌ وَيَصِحُّ السَّلَمُ حَالًا وَمُؤَجَّلًا فِيمَا تَكَامَلَتْ فِيهِ خَمْسُ شَرَائِطٍ. So he says, and it's okay to do salam, like yasih, that's sahih, halan wa mu'ajjalan. So he says here, halan, so what if someone makes an order, and you give them the order right away? They're sitting with you. You give them the order right away. They say, I want, say for instance, you have iPhones, or you're going to be selling iPhones. So this guy comes to you and says, I want iPhone 13 Pro, 128 gigs, blue. And so he says this, and so this guy, and then you're like, okay, and so you're gonna pay me how much? And you get the price, and he says, I'm gonna order this from you. He orders it, you walk away, come right back with it. That's a salam, even though it happened right now, and this is permissible. In the Shafi'i madhab, it's permissible. Some people in other madhabs, they say no, it has to be a time later. He says it can either happen now or it can happen later. It's permissible to do either now or later. And so he says, فِيمَا تَكَامَلَتْ فِيهِ خَمْسَةُ شُرَائِطٍ. So it's okay to do this with 5 conditions that need to be met. Takamalats that are met, or that are completed. So the first of these he mentions here, أَحَدُهَا أَيَكُونَ مَضْبُوطًا بِالصِّفَةِ. So this thing needs to be madbut, which means that it is that it's encompassed with the sifa. There's characteristics that this thing is described properly. All of the descriptors for this object that would change if it was changed. Like if this was a different, description for this, say the iPhone. If it was 256 gigs, it would have a different worth than 120. So I can't just say iPhone. I need to say which capacity is it. And if it was Pro, or if it wasn't Pro, this is going to change the price too. And the colors, this would probably change the price too as well. So all of these things that would change any description of it, that would change the price, needs to be written on that. Is it new or slightly used? All of this will change the price. So any description that would change the price, it needs to be put into the salam. The same thing if it's a type of rice, you need to say long grain rice, or whatever family it is that would be known as that basmati rice, or if it's going to be short grain rice, or Egyptian rice. And all these things, it needs to be understood to a point where there's not going to be any jahala, where there's not going to be any ambiguity about what the product is that this person is buying. And of course, this needs to be understood. And of course, we're not looking at this product in the get-go, so we have to make sure that we have described it properly, so this person knows what he's paying for. In general. And of course he can't And he'll talk about some of this. And he says, أن يكون وأن يكون جنسا لم يختلط به غيره. So this is another issue, because he doesn't want this to have something that's mixed. It can't be something that's mixed with another jins. So, and some of the examples that they would give is like certain types of perfumes. So you have one type of perfume mixed with another perfume, and when they do the mixing, normally it's kind of you don't know how much is going to go into it, of this to that. That ratio, you don't always know. Or at that time, like a lot of times they wouldn't know, but they get the certain mix and then they sell this. And so if you were to do a salam in this, it would not be okay, because you don't know how much from each one is coming. In this day and age, they will say, if you know exactly how much comes from each one of these different jinns, then it's okay to mix it. And normally, in this day and age, like if we have these items that are mixed from different things, that are mixed into one thing, we would have a formula that we know all of this formula comes out this product. But before this formula, they'd say no. And like that is like also pottery and some things that there's other things that go into it. You wouldn't be able to do a salam with it, because there's possibilities that things are going to vary from the materials. The materials will vary from one thing to another and coming through with it. So this is from one jins. If it's mixed with another, he says it's not okay to do this. And the reason for it is we don't know how much from each jins is going to be there. But if we did know exactly how much from this thing would actually make it, like there's an actual ratio that is known, that's not going to change from one product or from one batch to the next, then in this case it's permissible. And this is looking at the meaning behind it. And then the third thing that he mentions here of the 5 conditions, he says وَلَمْ تَدْخُلْهُ النَّارُ لِإِحَالَتِهِ. This is the third condition, that there's no fire that came into it to make it into the product that it is. Such as if someone wanted to buy bread. So they're going to buy bread every single day, and they're going to pay at the beginning of the month for bread. To come every single day, 10 loaves. Say I want 10 loaves of Aisha Beledi. So I'm going to get, I want 10 loaves every single day, so I pay at the beginning of the month, say I pay like 200. And so the amount, like each one of these loaves of bread, it'll be a little different. And once fire comes into the mix, it will make it a little different, and it will change its composition. So they would say this is not permissible for someone to do. This is the Shafi'i method, but like the actual fatwa is different than this. Like the actual fatwa is that people are allowed to do this transaction, because normally we know that this is not a huge change, but it does change. Since it does change, they would say no. Since it changed the composition. Like once fire comes into the equation, things are going to get messy, and we don't know how much went into the product at the end. Now, how much of the original product went into the end, so we don't know how much has changed. So because of this ambiguity, this is why they say it's not permissible. But like, of course, the fatwa is that this type of transaction, as long as it's not going to be a significant change between this, then it's permissible. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And the fourth thing that he mentioned here, وَالرَّابِعُ أَلَّا يَكُونَ الْمُسْلَمُ فِيهِ مُعَيَّنًا بَلْ. And so like that this thing that is that this person is ordering, or that they want in the future, this thing can't be something that is mu'ayyan. It can't be an actual product or from an actual batch. So if I have we're talking about farmers. So I have a whole orchard of apples. So if I were to do a salam with apples, I would say that I have Michigan Red Delicious apples. I think that's the thing. So I'd say we're going to get you Michigan Red Delicious apples, but I can't say from my orchard, because this is mu'ayyan. So I'd say I'm going to get you batch this how many kilos or pounds of Michigan Red Delicious apples at this day, or I'm going to give you through the course of this, I'm going to give you Red Delicious Michigan apples, whatever. But if I say it has to be from my farm, then this I can't do, because this is now made it mu'ayyan. This thing in general, the salam needs to be something that is described, but it's not to a specific area or from something that is specified. Because what if something happens to my crop? What am I going to do? So if this is why it can't be something mu'ayyan. So if something happened to my crop, I have to get it from somebody else, but as long as it meets the descriptions, I did what my duty was. Because in essence, this is a dain. This is a loan that this person is giving in a different form. And so this is And so when this thing is, it can't be mu'ayyan, which is like that it's individual object, or from something that is individual batch. So if you have a certain batch of something, it can't be from that individual batch, but rather it needs to be something that fits this in a general form. Any other questions before we move on?
You said,
Yeah.
You said it can't be from a specific like batch. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if I had grain with me, and I said, you're going to get this, I'm going to give you sanam from the grain that's with me, or I'm going to give you sanam from my orchard. This would be impermissible to say my orchard. You have to explain the thing that you're giving the sanam, but you don't make it to an individual thing. Like you don't ever point to an individual batch or an individual thing. So it needs to be something that's vague.
Let's say if it was like an iPhone, like you remember we were talking about the iPhone situation. The batch is in the back, right? Like
maybe, but I don't say it, and it's not a part of the. It's not a part of the deal. Even if it is from something that I know I'm gonna give him from something that's mu'ayyan. All right, I know I'm gonna give him from something that's mu'ayyan. That's just what I know, but I don't say this as a part of what the deal is. I say the description is this. All right, this is what you're gonna get. And I don't say it's from my batch. Of course, I can give them from whatever batch I want. From my batch, it's anyone else's batch. But I can't make it from my, if I say this is going to be from my batch of iPhones that I have in the back, no. This is bayr ayn al-ghaib. And this is not layjus. Because it's an actual thing, or it's from something that's a certain batch.
Why is that problematic?
Because it doesn't go into the meaning of salaf. And salaf is an exception to the general rule that you don't sell what is not with you. All right? And so if you're selling something that's not with you, this is an actual thing. لا تبيع ما ليس عندك. And so like this is the hadith that comes that don't sell what is not with you. This is the basic thing. But if you're selling something that normally you can give this thing, and it's not from something that's mu'ayyan, it's not from something that's individual batch, but rather it's something that you normally can give to this person, this is okay. And this would be a salam. And it doesn't fall into the prohibition. But if it's from something that is mu'ayyan, maybe this thing maybe there's a problem with this thing, you don't know about it. Maybe something happens. And this is a dain, in essence. This is a loan that you're doing. But it's a backwards loan. Because you can have a loan where someone buys the item up front and he gives you the money later. This is as if he gives you the money now and he's wanting the item later. You see? And this also where drop shipping comes into this as well. And drop shipping is like this because you would have in the drop shipping, you have you can provide this service for this person, which is you can get this item to him. So when you would sell it, this person is giving you salam. And so all of it would take the ruling of salam. So this person, you have the item that say you put it up on Instagram or whatever, all of the descriptions, maybe you got a sample photo for them to see what it is, you got all of the size, weight, all the things that's going to change from that. You put it up there on Instagram or whatever, how other people are selling it. And this person comes to you and he says, okay, I'm ordering one. He's ordering one. And it's as long as you get him that item and you're able to get him that item, then you getting him the item is one thing. As soon as he orders, then it's as if you have a debt upon you to give him this item. However you get it to him, this item is fine. So you get your drop shipper to ship it to him. All right, you gave him back what his loan is. So he got this back in the form of the item, and there's no problem with this. It takes the ruling of a salam, and some people have talked about this is impermissible drop shipping and whatnot, and like it's very. When we look at, sometimes we have these new issues that come into our transactions, and there will be things in the shariah that have already been talked about that are just like it. And this is of the examples. This is like, this fits into the description of drop shipping, as long as this is an item that normally you can provide for this person. Like you have the hookup that can actually get it to him. If you know that you can't necessarily, it's maybe you can't get it to him, then in this case, no. But if you know normally you can get this item to get to him, then it's fine to do this. Here he says for the last condition, I mentioned that it's not something that's mu'ayyan, and he also says wala min mu'ayyanin. What he means by wala min mu'ayyanin is not from a specific thing or a specific place. And this is something that is general, because in general it should be a jins that you're giving, like a certain object that you can get normally. And so there's also a couple other conditions. He says he's going to give 8 conditions for the salam itself to be permissible. Let's see if we have time. Inshallah, we'll finish up this bab and we'll leave it for today. He says of the first, ثم لصحة السلم فيه ثمانية الشرائط. And so he says there's 8 conditions for this salam, for this to be the salam fihi is like the thing that is going to be given for the item itself. So this is the first of these conditions. He says here is وهو أن يصفه بعد ذكر جنسه ونوعه بالصفات التي يختلف بها الثمن. So that this thing is described with its jins, which is like the type, and naw', which is like the more specific type. So you have jins, then you have naw', which is more specific. Bisifat, with all of the characteristics that the price would change with. So it needs anything that's going to affect the price needs to have that characteristic on that. And so this is the first thing that is of those 8 conditions. And with any. And the second one is أن يذكر قدره بما ينفي الجهالة عنه. So like, and this thing needs to be known as like how much of it. So it's like, say if this was rice, we need to say how many kilos, or however much, to make sure that we know exactly how much we're going to get from this thing. And so this is also important that there's no jahala or like ambiguity or something that's unknown about this. And he says in the third thing, وَإِنْ كَانَ مُؤَجَّلًا ذَكَرَ وَقْتَ مَحِلِّهِ. And so if this is something that is going to be given at a later date, so he's not going to get it right now, he's going to get it at a later date, then he needs to like ذَكَرَ وَقْتَ مَحِلِّهِ. So he needs to tell the person what time this is going to be available for him. Normally, if we're doing like shipping, we would normally say the shipping process is this. We'd say like this should get you in 2 weeks, or this should get you in 7 days. Normally, like, and we would know this, it should get you 7 days. We have to tell them like the time that it will get to him, and it doesn't have to be exact, but it needs to be understood to where there's no ambiguity about it. And also, وأن يكون موجودا عند الاستحقاق في الغالب, and that this thing is available when it should be, when this person has agreed to get it, when he has the right to get this item. It needs to be something that's normally available في الغالب. So there's certain times here, and like say in Misr, there's certain times where we'll have rotab, and like rotab is like the fresh dates. They only come at a certain time of the year. And so if I were to do salam on fresh dates at a time of the year where they're not going to be around, this would be problematic. Or like a fruit. Sometimes fruits go bad, and you'll only have this fruit at a certain time of the year. If I were to give a salam at the opposite time of the year, that this fruit is not normally available, this would be invalid. So it needs to be something that normally this person would be able to come through with that salam at that time. And if it's something that normally you can't do it, then in this case, no. And so then he also says here, وَأَن يَذْكُرَ مَوْضِعَ قَبْضِهِ, that also the person, when they get the mawdi' al-qabd, is when this person receives the item, he says where he's going to get it. So like if I have someone shipping me an item, I have my place of address. I give them the address, this is where I'm going to receive the item. So it's not unknown. It's like we don't know where we're going to get this item. No, we have a shipping address that it's coming to. Or I'm going to go pick it up at the store. We agree upon this. It needs to be known, and it needs to be set. And so in the sixth of these, وَيَكُونَ الثَّمَنُ مَعْلُومًا. Of course, the person needs to know how much he's paying for this thing, and that this is a known price for it. وَأَن يَتَقَابَضَا, in that the people, they وَيَتَقَابَضَا قَبْلَ التَّفَرُّقِ. So the basis of the salam is that this person pays all of the price up front. Not that he pays some of it and then when it comes he pays the rest. No, he needs to pay all of it at the beginning, and this needs to happen first and foremost before the transaction goes through. He needs to actually pay. Once the payment goes through, then he can get the order afterwards. But if he hasn't paid, then this doesn't work. And so like if someone is wanting somebody to get an order for them and they haven't paid anything, then this is not salam. Until he has actually paid something, then it becomes valid. But it's not valid until he actually pays. And also he says the last of these, the eighth one, he says وَأَن يَكُونَ عَقْدُ السَّلَمِ نَاجِزًا لَا يَدْخُلُ خِيَارُ الشَّرْطِ, and that this is something that happens as a final transaction, so that he doesn't say I have 3 days to decide. No, because this is like a dain, this is a loan. So when he does the loan, it happened. As soon as he paid the money for this item, then this person has to pay through on it. He can't have any after 3 days if I change my mind. No, he has to come through with this. And this is of the things that go. The Shafi'is will say this is of the things that go against the basic rule of buying and selling. So there will always be like more tadbiq. There'll be more conditions than for buying and selling by itself, because this is something that goes against the norm of buying and selling. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And just another note is, like, if someone wanted to do sanam on something that's nadir, like we talked about, something that needs to be found, like mawjudan and istihqaq and ghalib. If someone wanted to do a sanam with certain rare pearls, this wouldn't work, because maybe this person can't find the pearls. It's something it's rare. You can't do sanam on something that's rare. It needs to be something that's normal, that's normally going to be found. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Any questions?
Can you give another example of like a modern day version of what this would look like in our time?
Okay. A modern day version of what this would look like is I'm dealing cars, okay? You come to me and you say, I want a Toyota Prius, 2018 Toyota Prius, and this is the type of doors and whatnot, whatever the different types of models are. You choose the model, and then you pay right up front. You give me the price, and then I am going to come through and get you this Prius. And it's not an actual one, but I just need to get any Prius that fits the description that we agreed upon, and I get this to you, and I get it to your doorstep, or we agree on a place that we're going to meet, and you're going to pick it up. All right?
So like a lot of online shopping kind of.
Yeah, online shopping a lot of times is salam, unless it's muayyan. If it's muayyan, then it falls into al-bay' bis-sifat, which, like, the Shafi'is don't allow this. Like, sometimes if someone has something on Etsy, they're selling something on Etsy that's a product they made. It's an actual product. When they're wanting to get like good price on this, but this person's never seen it with their eyes. They've only seen it on pictures. Shafi'is will say no. Like the Hanabila, they say that's okay, as long as it fits the description, and this person knows what they're buying generally, then it's okay. But this would not be okay with the Shafi'i opinion. Yeah, and of course, like, go to your mufti if you need questions for some of this. Don't feel like you need to stick to a certain madhab. You're saying, oh, I'm studying Shafi'i madhab, so I'm only going to do this way. There's something, of course, sometimes we have to think bigger than a madhab when it comes to transactions, especially Shafi'i. Occasionally, they will go a bit hardcore on some of these transactions when it's open for debate, and you can get a fatwa that will probably serve you and the community much more. Wallahu ta'ala.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.